My name is Chris, and today is all about my trip to Texas and my visit with Danny Richie at GR Research. Welcome to the Vinyl Attack. I feel that I must give you a brief reprisal that I won't be tackling the video that brought my trip to its inception, i.e. Danny's call-out to YouTube reviewers. I feel that topic has been discussed at length by people on both sides of the issue, and nothing further is really to be had by continuing to beat it to death here. Instead, I'm going to focus on what actually took place during my trip and the experiences I had. I feel this is more relevant to potentially clearing up any questions I'm sure many of you have. If you're simply looking for gossip and dirt, however, I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed, as I'm also not interested in adding fuel to that fire either. For those of you wondering, as I did see a rude comment or two about it, I did in fact pay for my own plane ticket and my rental car. Danny was not and is not offering people an all-expenses-paid vacation to sway your opinions on his products or thought processes concerning reviews. I trust that none of you will have trouble with this. I will say that he and his lovely wife Christy were kind enough to put me up in their home for a few days to help with my financials. So, if you're of the mind that this alone is enough proof to say that everything in this video is skewed and tainted, you might as well stop watching now, as there's nothing I'm going to be able to say that will dissuade you. For the rest of you non-conspiracy theorists, I'll start by saying while I wasn't sure what to expect when I arrived, I certainly wasn't expecting a look at the day-to-day life of Danny, his staff, or his business, but that's indeed part of what took place. Well, right after we went to the drag strip, that is. As it turns out, Danny's also quite a car guy, and one of the first questions out of his mouth was if I was a car guy as well. The local speedway was having its annual Texas Thaw drag race, and did I want to go? Never wanting to turn down a good drag race, I of course said yes. There were hot rods on display in the form of a local car show and a host of drag racers there, all vying for their opportunity to win $6,000, which, if I'm not mistaken, was going to charity. A great group of people here. After spending the afternoon in the wonderful 80-degree sun and taking in some fantastic racing, including a hot rod wheelie contest that was won by a bumper-dragging orange beast, we went back to the shop for a bit to tour around the facilities. You'll probably be bummed to know that I didn't take a bunch of photos, and I apologize. Whenever I travel anywhere, my daughter is the one to constantly remind me to take photos to share for her. Knowing that she doesn't care much about hi-fi and my cantankerous nature to actually enjoy the experience of where I am and what I'm doing, I simply chose to live in the moment and not document it. From here we went over to his listening room, which is in his home. Now, I've seen patient spouses before, but Christy might just be up for sainthood with her calm nature. The entire middle room of their house is the dedicated room for the reference system Danny uses to listen to and test products, and I must say, it's quite impressive. Centered around a pair of his NX Stream open baffle floor standing speakers, his system employs a mix of digital and analog sources, all run from battery power to keep the line noise out, and a comfortable seat directly in the path of it all to soak it in. This older photo shows a pared down version of what I saw and heard, including two giant servo subs just behind the extremes to help fill out the sound. Before we even got to listening to music though, we spent a good deal of time just talking about our hobby, our likes, our dislikes, YouTube, reviewing, testing, and how we got into hi-fi in the first place and the goals we have down the line. This, more than anything, set the tone for my trip, and I wish I were able to convey it to you in a manner that would make a little more sense. Music and hi-fi performance are absolute passions for Danny, and his kind nature is just something that doesn't come across through the camera as much. More than likely just because he's doing work mode when doing the GR Research videos, but it was wonderful to see the much more human side of him, as this is something that I think a lot of people forget about when watching videos on YouTube. Because we see the same person from week to week talking about a hobby that we also love, we start to get the feeling that we know that person. We identify with their opinions. We find things in common with their personalities. We feel connected when, in fact, we generally aren't. For all the videos we watch and all the things that we learn about a host, we actually don't know these people. They are complete strangers on a personal level. This was an opportunity to meet another audiophile on that personal level and have quality discussions about gear, music, and all the other traits that make this hobby so prevalent in the lives of its pursuers. After that was over, though, we got down to business and started listening to some music. Now, considering this is about a visit to GR Research, I'm guessing a big part of why you're here will be to see on which side of the discussion I reside when it comes to cables. Do they matter? Are they snake oil? Did I drink the Kool-Aid? Well, I'm going to tell you, but first, I want to tell you why I haven't brought it up before this trip, and it has nothing to do with Danny, his company, or anything of the sort. It has to do with the fact that so many people involved in this discussion can't seem to act like adults. Yeah, you heard me. Considering that all the people that enter into this conversation tucked safely behind their keyboards at home are supposed to be grown-ups, I see a bunch of immature behavior on both sides of the line. This, more than anything, has kept me at bay and prevented my entering the room. Why would anyone want to throw their hat into the ring when they see this type of nonsense going on? Personal insults and attacks, threats, mudslinging, direct attacks to the integrity and credibility of those who dare to disagree with whichever position is opposite of yours. A complete lack of regard to the person, the human being, whom your disparaging remarks might impact. It's no wonder this hobby of ours is looked down upon by so many who sit idly by and see the antics that take place within. So because of this, I have kept my distance. But I feel at this stage, I'd just be avoiding the issue and letting down the viewers of this channel if I didn't address my stance. Do cables matter? You're not gonna like this. Ladies and gentlemen, it depends. Now, before you head directly to the comments to tell me I'm still avoiding the issue or to pick a side already, hear me out. There are a couple of rules for this video. Actually, just one rule.
Be nice.
Come on.
I want you to be nice.
Okay.
That's right. Be nice. Or, moreover, just be respectful. Please. I am more than happy to listen to anyone who agrees or disagrees with me, provided it's in a respectful manner to everyone involved. If you're either unable or unwilling to keep your temper under control, no matter which side of the debate you sit, I will absolutely delete your comments and block them if necessary. We are adults here, and we built a great community on this channel. Let's try to keep that in mind. Now then, do cables matter? While listening to a great track by Jennifer Warnes called The Panther, Danny asked if I'd like to hear something. Of course, I said yes, so he said to keep doing what I was doing, which is simply listening intently with my eyes closed. He played the intro of the song 3 times, and then there was a pause. After this, he played the intro again. Immediately, I noticed that there was a change in the music. This is the part where you need to try and keep an open mind because I had no idea what, if anything, he'd done. Did he switch something? Did he not, to try and test me? Either way, I'd heard what I'd heard, so I simply asked him, "What did you do?" Looking over at Danny and Hobbs, his employee and right-hand man, who were both smiling, he simply said he changed the orientation of the FireWire cable that connected to his Mac Mini from which he was streaming. That's it. He reversed the damn cable, and I'd heard it. Now, this part is more important as it will come up again, so remember that I absolutely did not believe that things like FireWire and USB cables had any bearing on a sound quality. I've been told a million times that digital signals are digital signals, and that's that. Ones and zeros are the same across the board. As it turns out, that's not completely accurate. Apparently, the basic science behind it is that one end of the FireWire cable has an open connection while the other one is closed. This has something to do with completing a circuit and the introduction of noise, but more importantly, this was enough to change the sound and make an audible difference. It doesn't stop there either. You want to hear something that really pissed me off? Cable risers. As I initially rounded the corner from the kitchen into the listening room, I was greeted with a fantastic system, and there on the ground were Danny's controversial speaker cables being elevated by Tinker Toys. I thought to myself, what fresh hell is this? The guy's into cable risers too, and on top of that, they're frickin' toys. But being a polite guest, I let that conversation sit for a while as we went deeper into the listening session. Eventually, Danny addressed the miniature pony in the room and mentioned that a friend of his named Dave Elledge brought the idea back to the forefront of Danny's mind. As it turns out, Danny had tried cable risers before with no effect. Dave asked if he'd tried with these cables, and when Danny said he hadn't, they proceeded to use boxes at first just for proof of concept. Apparently there was a small change, so Danny set out to find something better with which to test. The end result were Tinker Toys. Now, I have always contended that cable risers are a waste of time and certainly a lot of money, considering how much people are charging for them, so you can probably imagine my mixture of shock, disappointment, and anger when I heard for myself that they did in fact work. I'm still mad about it, and I'm still not talking to Dave for bringing it up in the first place. But there it was, plain as day, there was a difference. So, do cables matter? You might be surprised to hear that I still say, it depends. There are a host of people that say there is no difference and that they have proof. I'm not going to say that they're wrong. I am certain that there are a host of people who can't hear any difference at all, but it's not what you might think, and I do call into question the proof. Firstly, let's tackle the why. Am I saying that my hearing is better and you lowly hobbyists simply can't achieve this level of zen? Don't be ridiculous. Of course not. But some of you will have to keep in mind that your hearing may indeed make it more difficult, if not impossible, to hear a difference. We get old, folks, and that's a fact. As this happens, the accuracy and frequency range of our hearing deteriorates. Now, that's not to say that all older people can't hear, or that only the young can hear a difference, because age isn't the only factor in an inability to hear a change in a cable. Sometimes a person's hearing just isn't able to make it happen. I also think that this is more of a rarity though, and I promise I'm not making excuses. It's also not an insult. People who haven't heard a difference in cables no matter what they've tried tend to get a bit defensive in my experience. They don't hear anything, so there is no way you can hear it. That's just not how things work, unfortunately. But telling someone that doesn't hear a difference that they're wrong also doesn't work. They truly don't hear it, so they're not wrong. Can you see how this gets a bit confusing? Another reason, and more likely the main factor, is the system on which their listening is done. Now, I can see some of you already running into the comments again to tell me that you've done cable comparisons on systems that cost X amount of dollars and you didn't hear anything. And that's fair. I'm not claiming that you did, but I think the more likely scenario, at least most of the time anyway, is that the system being used just isn't compatible with the listening test. I've heard cables that make a difference going all the way back to my days of playing guitar in a band. Everyone I know did the cable test dance to find out what they liked best in their rig, and it was definitely obvious there. Hell, even David Gilmour has gone on record talking about how the band tried every single cable they could get their hands on when making Dark Side of the Moon. Without trying to be an insensitive jerk, if you're telling me that David Gilmour doesn't know what he's talking about or couldn't hear a difference in cabling, I don't know that we'll ever be able to find common ground on this topic. Hell, I'm not even sure we can be friends, but that's not the entirety of the point I'm trying to make. It's not always about resolution. It's also about compatibility. I have swapped cables before on guitar amps as well as my integrated amps in my stereo and heard no difference at all. That's right, the cable didn't matter. Not every cable is going to make a life-changing sound difference in every system you come across, but in my time at GR Research, I was able to hear the differences and changes that were made. But he's trying to sell you something, you say. As a matter of fact, he isn't. Danny doesn't make FireWire cables. He doesn't make USB cables. He also doesn't make Tinker Toys or any other kind of cable riser. While he does make speaker cables, you may be surprised to hear that we never once swapped them out. I think this was intentional on his own part to make sure that no one could claim his stance on the matter was financially rooted. But what about the measurements? If you can hear it, you can measure it. Indeed, you can. But as odd as it may be to consider, while you can measure everything you hear, measurements can't hear everything that you can. Confused yet? Let me try to use a simple analogy. My sister is a frickin' expert with wine. Her taste, her smell, her knowledge, and her experience are so vastly beyond mine that when I want a bottle, I simply ask her opinion and give her my trust. She has shown me again and again that she simply knows what the hell she's talking about. So when asking for a relatively affordable yet good wine, she was quick to recommend something from the Francis Ford Coppola line. Yeah, I had my doubts too, as celebrity booze is a pet peeve of mine, but this stuff is no joke. Well, at Christmas one year, we did a taste comparison. 2 identical types of wine from 2 different vineyards. The first I honestly don't remember, but the second was the Coppola. Guess where I'm going with this? While the wines both looked identical, were made with the same type of grapes, the same techniques, had the same coloring and alcohol content, they tasted completely different. That is to say, these 2 wines measured the same, and yet they would still taste different. For another example, take a look at these 2 crossovers. One is made of lower grade parts, and the other, quite frankly, is engineered to death with quality parts. Would it surprise you to learn that they measure the same? Yep. You get the same frequency response from both crossovers, but the really over-engineered one absolutely has a different sound. Let's try a quick experiment. Listen to this test tone, and then tell me about its spaciousness, height, depth, and soundstage. Are you ready? Here, I'll play it again. Not much to hear, is it? Guess what? This is the type of test tone used to determine frequency response. That mess of noise. When you take that into consideration, you may start to see that while 2 cables may measure the same using this industry standard and effective test, it clearly doesn't tell the entire picture. The most expensive and accurate microphone in the entire world still can't hold a candle to the human ear. We truly are a fascinating organism. Because of this, and the stereo nature of our listening, we are able to perceive sound as not only sound, but space. Not like outer space, but dimension. Just by listening to something, we humans are fairly accurately able to tell how far away it is. When quality speakers and amps produce excellent imaging, this is what we're hearing. Measurements just aren't able to replicate that no matter how much we would like them to. So, cables matter then? As I've said, it depends. But more importantly than my trying to show you how they do in some instances is your ability to try to keep an open mind. I can say without question that I never thought a firewire cable and some cable risers could affect the sound in a 2-channel system, but they did. The rub is your mileage may vary. As a matter of fact, my mileage may vary too. I clearly have one of Danny's heavy-duty power cables here to test out, and quite frankly, I have no idea if I'll hear a difference in my system or not. I'll be doing the same thing with speaker cables and even cable risers, as I've ordered myself some Tinker Toys. Hey, there's no sense in spending more than you need to when it comes to testing, right? But again, that's the key. Testing, experimenting. Measure what you can, but try out everything else as well to really get the full picture. Try a different cord, flip a few around, raise them off the floor. Try anything you can think of and want, because that's part of the beauty in this hobby. The little things that might surprise you and change what you're hearing. The little adjustments that make your system your own. And if you're in that camp that simply doesn't believe a word of it, you know what? That's good too. Let's just be polite with one another about it. No one here can or will win anything. This simply isn't something that can be empirically proven, no matter how bad we might want it to be. More importantly, it's not a contest. So in lieu of that, treat each other with a bit of respect when it comes to this discussion. This hobby has enough elitists and naysayers, and it's hard enough to find people around town who enjoy the hobby like we do, so being polite will go a long way to help it grow and create a positive environment where the discussion can flourish. In the meantime, I'm going to try some different things to see what I get, and I'm also going to book a return trip to Texas at some point. Between the hi-fi stuff, the barbecue, the red tacos, and the fantastic ribeye that I got at Sweetie Pie's, thanks to Ron Burnett for picking up the tab even though he couldn't join me, there are a lot of great things to see and do there. For me, the trip was absolutely worth it, and I'm glad I went. For those who chose not to go, I can see their side of things as well. I just hope at some point, whether it's on the internet or at a hi-fi show, we can all learn to be just a little more patient and polite with one another. Thanks for listening to me ramble, and I look forward to next time.